Hello and welcome to the Fully Charged Show podcast. My name is Robert Llewellyn, and this week, I'm on my own. Now, there's really good reasons for that. One, I'm in the middle of Tasmania on a very isolated farm. That's one reason, so it's quite difficult. I've got some sheep I can talk to and loads of kookaburras, lots of things like that. I can see, wow, I didn't know that before. I can see a kookaburra on a branch outside the house I'm in, and I can see a load of sheep. So there we go. Anyway, there is a lot of news going on, and I just thought it's important to keep the podcast going. So I thought I would just go through it on my own. So I'm going to try and keep it fairly brief. The reason Jonny's not with me this time is because he's currently in Geneva at the motor show in Geneva, doing a lot of coverage for Fully Charged, because this is the problem we've got at the moment. There's just too many electric cars being announced and introduced and coming onto the market. How are we supposed to keep up? If the manufacturers cared about Fully Charged, they try and kind of pace them out a bit so they don't all come out at once. Oh, Lord. It's absolutely exhausting. So for the last 10 years, I've been, slightly fingers crossed behind my back, predicting that there will be a shift and that there will come a time when there are a lot of electric cars around and there's a lot of stuff going on in that area. Well, that's happened. That's what's happening now, and it's completely exhausting. It's brilliant in some ways. All transitional technologies are disruptive, and therefore some things are bad as well as good. Always said that. Got to bear that in mind. But clearly, without any doubt, there's an enormous amount going on in the electric vehicle world. As we will discover with this first story, not always positive. So some listeners in the UK will be aware of this, but around the world, some of you may not. But there is a very large Honda car plant, car manufacturing facility in a town called Swindon, in the south of England, which isn't that far from where I live. It's about 45 miles from where I live, which has just been announced that it's closing down. 5,000 jobs in a fairly small town, which has had in its recent past, very high unemployment, lots of social problems. Honda is by far the biggest employer in the town. It's really sad. It's a very modern factory. It's not been there that long, and it's closing down. Now, pundits, of which I've always wanted to not be one, some pundits immediately jumped on it's because of Brexit bandwagon. I think we can say now, as the story unfolds, that it's not entirely unrelated to Brexit, but it isn't only because of that. What is very clear is it's also because Honda have been, I think it's fair to say, dragging their feet in developing electric cars. But as we've seen on Fully Charged recently, they are now rapidly catching up. So they've launched the Honda E prototype, which we've just featured. Jonny Smith's had a good look around. He is raving about it. It's quite interesting when he does a show about a car and he goes, yeah, no, it was good. And then you forget about it. This one, he keeps going on and on about the Honda E prototype. He just absolutely loved it. A small, compact, cheaper. The whole point is, if they don't make it cheaper, as many people have commented, it's not going to work. It's got to be a cheaper car. It has limited range in comparison with other cars that are coming out now that are all like over 200 miles. This is more like 130 to 150. We don't know yet. So there's no point jumping up and down going, the range is rubbish, because we don't know. Anyway, what it appears now is this factory that's closing in Swindon was being designated and upgraded and modernised to produce electric cars for Honda. And a heartbreaking addition to this story is, which was just reported in the Swindon Advertiser, which is the local paper for the area the factory's in, that there was a ship sailing towards the UK from Japan carrying equipment to allow the factory to produce plug-in hybrid and electric cars, modernisation equipment and other facilities to allow for that to be manufactured. Because at the moment it just makes petrol cars in Swindon. And there had been, it appears, according to the Swindon Advertiser, so, all stories should be taken with a small bag of salt, or in some cases a very large sack, but I think this is a grain of salt for this one. There had been plans to make Swindon the European production facility for Honda's new electric models. If that is the case, then we can start to argue the fact that it is because of Brexit. Because if who knows, no one knows, no one knows. This is the wonderful, wonderful thing about Brexit. You can't be ill-informed about Brexit. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. All I get asked all the time when I'm overseas is, what is going on with your country? And the only answer anyone can honestly give is, I haven't got a clue. Including the Prime Minister, including all the civil servants, including all the politicians on either side of the argument, no one knows. It's a pig wouldn't eat that breakfast. I was going to say it's a pig's breakfast, but I think a pig would turn up its snout and go and look for something else. Anyway, Honda pulled the plug. They turned that ship around in the mid-ocean and took it back to Japan, which is heartbreaking. So I really feel for the people of Swindon, for the guys and women that work at the Honda facility. It's not closing down like tomorrow. It's in a couple of years' time. They're winding it down. And you can only hope that some negotiations will take place now which will allow it to continue. But that, again, means that, once again, corporations are in control, not governments. So governments go scrabbling to corporations to keep them in their countries. Amazon in New York. Some of you may know of that story. Well, they're not going to be in New York because the New Yorkers wouldn't pay the bribes that Amazon were demanding so they could continue to not pay any tax. All right, let's not get too political, but I think everyone agrees Amazon should pay some tax somewhere. I mean, even if it's in Vanuatu, at least they pay some. They don't pay anywhere. The richest people in the world never pay any tax, just to remind you of that. But the workers in the Swindon plant, it's so heartbreaking. They should be at the forefront of the shift to electric vehicles. The story about this is in the Guardian newspaper in the UK. I keep saying newspaper. It's not paper. The Guardian news site. We should be building cleaner cars here that people will be driving in the future. That's what we should be doing. And so this change is incredibly challenging for the auto industry. I was talking to someone about this last night on an interview. It's a really complicated thing for big car companies to shift their production from making literally millions of diesel and petrol engines every year that they put in their old cars, their old-fashioned cars, and to transform their huge companies and all the people they employ in their factories all around the world to transform them to make something else. It's going to take some time. There's no question about it, but there's certainly the combination of the transition from fossil burners to electric cars and Brexit in the UK is clearly going to be very, very painful. But let's move on. Let's just move on from that slightly contentious topic. Tesla Model 3 price announcement. They came out with the fact that they can actually produce the basic version of the Tesla Model 3 for $35,000, which at the time of recording, interesting, I didn't realise this, time of recording is £26,500 in the UK, which is, considering the quality of the car, I've sat in it, considering the technology that's involved in it, considering that they are producing them in the hundreds of thousands now, is incredibly cheap. But in order to do that, they've cut costs right across the rest of the country. I'm sure they won't be. I just want to make that point. They won't be £26,500 when they come out in the UK. They will be more. But the current, when I just checked, I just did it in a currency converter. What is $35,000 in UK pounds? It is 26,500 or thereabouts. It will change on a minute by minute basis. But the details, I got this story from the Driven website, which is in fact an Australian website, which is obviously why I saw it, because I'm in Australia. So the Australians are very excited about getting the Model 3 here. They know they're going to have to wait longer than anyone else on Earth, as they do for all electric cars, and they're slightly annoyed about that. So what's happening is Tesla are shutting down most of their showrooms in a move that it says is necessary in order to achieve lower prices to enable it to reach a wider market. So you will no longer, in most of the world, be able to go into a Tesla store like they have in big shopping malls. I mean, they've got them here in Australia. It's just like a shop. And there's a Model X in there, and there's the running gear with the battery underneath and all that stuff you can see on display there. They're closing those down, which is a great shame, because I know quite a lot of people who work in them. I assume they're losing their jobs. Yet again, I'm sorry to go on about people losing jobs. And so you can only order their cars now online, and you can apparently buy one in about 3 minutes. That's how long it takes. So a lot of cost-cutting measures. They're laying off 7% of their full-time staff and all non-critical contractors and temporary staff. So, yeah, they're clearly going through some pain in order to produce this car for the amount that their ever reliable and stable CEO suggested. But it's amazing if they do it. So a 26,000, let's say £30,000 car. I think that's more likely to be what it costs. For what it is really remarkable. I mean, it's absolutely state of the art, cutting edge, best of the best. They are miles ahead of everyone else. I am not a Tesla fanboy. I'll always be the first to criticize them, but we have to accept that their cars are a generation ahead of anything else made by anyone else, no matter how hard they're trying to catch up. And it's really important that they do try and catch up, and I want to encourage them to catch up and overtake. I want to really want to drive a car that is better than a Tesla. For the same price, for example. There's lots of other cars that are more sensible, smaller, cheaper to buy, much cheaper to run, all those things. But really, Tesla have got it. They've got it down. It's really, really difficult to not be impressed. They're implementing a number of software upgrades that will see increases in range for the rear-wheel drive Model 3 to 325 miles or 523 kilometres. And then, of course, the top speed for the performance Model 3. I don't know if I want to tell you about that because I am going to be driving one of those very soon. Okay, I'm not going to tell you about it. You'll find out soon enough. But that can go to 162 miles an hour or 260 kilometres an hour. 5% more peak power for all Model 3 versions. There we go. So all that stuff is done with over-the-air software updates. You couldn't do that with old-fashioned cars, and a lot of modern electric cars, you can't do that. I've really experienced that a lot. My Model S, which I've coming up for 4 years, I've been driving that car. It's a completely different car now to when I first got it. Almost unrecognisable in its controls, in its human interface. What I see on the screens when I drive along, totally different to when I first got it. And it's all happened while I've been asleep and the car's been charging. Moving on, this little story caught my eye because I use, on a few locations that I go to regularly in the UK, Tesla destination chargers. Those are Type 2 connectors, plug it into your Tesla, charges it. Like at hotels, a gym that I go to keep myself very fit. Lots of car parks have them, lots of restaurants have them now. They're very common. But there's one particular location that I'm really aware of where there are four what look like Tesla chargers. They're all exactly the same, but two of them have a red sign over them that says Tesla destination charger, and two of them have a white sign. If you plug anything in, I've plugged the Hyundai Kona into the one with the white sign, it'll charge it. Any electric car with a Type 2 connector, you can charge it from those chargers. Plug the one with the red sign above it in, and it doesn't work because that only charges Teslas. That was what I thought until spotted charging in Sweden in a German language video from the Auto, Motor und Sport YouTube channel. A Mercedes EQC is really clearly shown charging from a Tesla destination charger. Not a supercharger, don't get me wrong, not a supercharger, but what this implies is, this is why the story has caught a little bit of attention in the world of Tesla fanatics. What this implies is that maybe has Mercedes, which has had a long relationship with Tesla, Daimler and Mercedes, has Mercedes done a deal with Tesla to use the supercharger network? If so, that is a game changer, because the other thing about Tesla, there's no arguing with it, it is the most comprehensive, most simple to use, the fastest charging network in the world. And so if Mercedes can use that, the attraction of buying a very large, very heavy, less energy efficient Mercedes luxury interior, better built, fantastic bodywork, road holding, all those things will be hugely, hugely high end. But to be able to use the Tesla supercharger network just puts that car in a totally new category for people who can afford to buy a 3-ton luxury electric SUV. This is from the article in Teslarati. Elon Musk has openly stated in the past that Tesla is open to the idea of sharing its supercharger network to other car makers. The CEO even emphasized his point by stating that Tesla does not in any way intend to make its superchargers a walled garden. So there you go. I mean, Daimler was among Tesla's major investors in the past. So they had a 10% stake, I believe, in Tesla. Back about 10 years ago. I think they've sold it. I can't remember now. But anyway, yeah, they certainly did. Oh, yeah, I've just seen it here. They pulled out their stake in 2014. Ah, there we go. They didn't do too badly. They invested $50 million. Like, wow, that's amazing. But by the time they sold it in 2014, their investment had grown to $780 million. Why didn't I... if I'd invested 50 quid in Tesla back then in 2009, that would have been worth £780. God, I could have gone out for a curry. Anyway, so that's that little story. Now, this is interesting because we've done an episode about Car2Go, about car sharing. We should do a load more. We should do a load more episodes about loads of topics, as I'm constantly reminded in comments. We will get to. We're trying to get to all of them before I fall off the perch. But so there's two big car sharing companies that operate a similar system. This is really basically where you either use. I think you can use membership card, but generally in certainly in Germany, it's your driving license. Put your driving license on a little reader on the windscreen, ping, door opens, get in, boom, off you go. And you don't have to, it's not a car that's parked in a special designated car park. You park it wherever you want to go and you just leave it there. Someone else comes and takes it. Brilliant system. I've used it in Berlin and somewhere else, Amsterdam. I can't remember. We used it a couple of times. Berlin is incredible because there's so many of these cars around. So the two biggest players have merged into one. So Drive Now and Car2Go are the two big ones, and it will from now on be one company called Share Now. They did try and introduce this into the UK in Birmingham, but it didn't work, and they withdrew the service in 2014. I don't know any of the details as to why it didn't work. I don't know why they chose Birmingham. I don't know anything about that story. I do remember they were going to come, and they were there, and then they stopped. So for whatever. Oh, this is what they said when they withdrew. We've listened closely to customer feedback and taking the UK's strong culture and tradition of private vehicle ownership, very important, into account. We've decided to withdraw from the UK marketplace. Basically, I think people didn't use them because they've already got their own cars. They don't want to drive that one. Sorry, that was meant to be a Birmingham accent, but it went too far north. It's because I've spent too long with Craig Charles. Every time I do a regional accent, it ends up as Liverpudlian. Bobby, you've got to get over it, man. You can't go on doing my accent, especially when it doesn't sound anything like me. You know what I'm saying? Brummie is a different accent. It's more like that. I don't want to share my car with anyone. I don't know who's been in it. There we go. That was the reaction of the people of Birmingham. It's sad because it's the largest company in the world. It's got 2.5 million registered members and a fleet of nearly 14,000 vehicles in 26 locations in North America, Europe, and Asia. So if you've got because this is the amazing thing with this, I'd forgotten about this. If you've got the Uber app, anywhere you go, it works. You don't have to be in the city you live in. Anywhere. I've used it all over the world. Extraordinary. I know there's loads of bad things about Uber, but when you're in a city you've never been in before and you go, I don't know how to get to the restaurant, and you go Uber, boom, you're done. The same with Car2Go. Any city that's got Car2Go in, you go in there, you go ping to the car, and off you go. But if you've got the Car2Go app or the Drive Now app, they still work with both. They now work with both cars, and soon it'll all be updated. Blah blah blah. Now I did hear this. I had a wonderful dinner in Portugal last year with one of the founders of Car2Go. We'd been at a conference together. Really nice guy, young German, highly successful, speaks perfect English. Anyway. When they initially introduced Car2Go into Berlin, it resulted in a genuinely noticeable, you could see it on the street, a notable drop in private car ownership in the city. people just went, I don't need to own a car, I'll flog it. So they sold their cars and they just used car-to-go cars when they needed to go anywhere in a car, which isn't that often. And they didn't have a car parked outside the house. So what it resulted in was less traffic and more parking spaces, which made car-to-go cars easier to use, which made more people adopt them, which made it, it just got better. But here's the thing, the generation that adopted it with the most enthusiasm were people in their sort of early 20s to early 30s. And then they started to have children. They met one another and started breeding. So unnecessary. A human activity that should be discouraged. They started to have children, and then private car ownership increased because of car seats. Because you get that. I totally hadn't thought about that. Because I've had children, and we had car seats in our car, and baby seats and safety seats for children. And so what people were doing was they were using car-to-go, but they were walking around the streets with huge baby seats and the pram and the diapers and the special nappy bag and oh God. And so they all gave up and bought a car and put baby seats in the back. And so, yeah, bloody kids ruin everything. No, I don't. They don't. They're lovely. And my children are wonderful and I love them very much. And they're all lovely. Final story. Google, Amazon and Microsoft are doing all they can to promote fossil fuel extraction. Did you know that? Google. We're so pure. All our servers are running off renewable energy. We are investing heavily in solar. Amazon. We've got the biggest solar farm in the world. We're spending billions producing solar. We're going to deliver all our packages in electric vehicles. Microsoft. We're very, very excited about the future of renewable energy and how we can integrate that into society using software products. That's what I think of them. They're all cutting edge, using wind and solar to run their server farms, using, the state-of-the-art software to run all this stuff, which they are doing. I'm not saying they're not doing that, but they're also investing gazillions in helping the oil industry to search out, to extract and to refine oil more efficiently. I mean, it's better that they're doing it more efficient. They're not investing in to make it worse. They are trying to make it more efficient. But there was an article in Gizmodo which said Amazon, Google and Microsoft have all struck lucrative arrangements collectively worth billions of dollars to provide automation, cloud and AI services to some of the world's biggest oil companies. And they are actively pursuing more. Well, I don't know why I shouldn't be surprised. This shouldn't even be a story. This is large multinational corporations doing what they do, making loads of money. It's just that we were, for a period of time, duped into believing they were slightly different from their forebears. They're not. They're just as bad, or in some cases, because of the deep and profound levels of hypocrisy, the fact that they don't pay tax anywhere, the fact that they are bigger and more powerful than any national government, means that we should really, really watch them carefully, be highly critical of them at all points, and try, because we haven't got any choice, to use market forces to change them. Because you can't use voting. There's no one you can vote for. I mean, you can become a shareholder, I suppose, and do voting like that. That's beyond me. I can't do shareholdings. But, there's nothing we can do about it. Are we going to use Google? Yeah, hello. Yes, it's called the internet, and they run it. Are we going to buy stuff in a shop? Well, no, because I click on the thing and then Amazon deliver it. Am I going to write letters on paper and put them in an envelope and send it by mail? No, we're going to use email and software and all the rest of it. So anyway, so that's a bit of an annoying story. But the final one, I think I think it is good. I think this is an uplifting story, although it's a confusing one, and I had to do some actual mental thinking to understand this. This story is about the Osbourne Effect. Now, people in the UK are immediately going to think the Osbourne Effect is to do with George Osborne, our ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, the money man for the British government in the last administration. Well, I suppose it's the current administration. Who knows? Someone's a Prime Minister somewhere. There's someone else is the Chancellor of the Exchequer now. I think a man with a really naff haircut, but I can't remember his name. And I'm proud of that I can't remember his name, because he's annoying and irrelevant historically. But this is nothing to do with George Osborne. who now is the editor of the London newspaper called the Evening Standard. No, it's not him. It's an article in Clean Technica. The Osbourne Effect is, according to this article, a perfect storm of three different phenomena which will profoundly affect the automotive industry. Now, these three impacts are delayed demand. This is really interesting because I'm aware of this, talk to a lot of people about this, because people are increasingly aware that a newer, better electric car is coming, say later this year, the new Renault Zoe, classic example. Would you go into a showroom now and buy the current Renault Zoe? If you know nothing about the automotive industry, you might do. But if you know anything about it, if you've read a little article, if you've heard us talk about it on Fully Charged, if you've heard someone else mention it on a blog or on a podcast or whatever, that there's a new Renault Zoe coming out, which there is, with longer range, same size battery, more efficient use, and it comes out in September, you go, oh, well, I'll wait till then. Well, that's happening not just with electric cars, but with all cars. People are delaying it because they know the next diesel car will be slightly cleaner by like 1.5%. And the next petrol car will be more efficient, and there'll be all those things. So they're not buying cars. And there's a massive stockpile of models, not electric ones, because they're all getting sold as soon as they're made, but of petrol and diesel cars, and it is a huge problem. So that's the number one. The next one is the rapidly decreasing cost of battery prices and other technologies to do with electric cars. And more people are now aware that these electric cars will be cheaper to purchase in coming years, which they will. There's no question about it. No one disagrees with that. Everyone agrees with that, including people who supply materials that make batteries, because everything in that industry is ramping up. So production levels are ramping up, more materials are being produced, cheaper materials, more cost-effective materials, less of the rare, weird, exotic and politically contentious materials are being used. All that stuff is happening very quickly. Solid-state batteries. We're going to be talking about solid-state batteries a lot this year because there's a lot happening in that space. So lots of people are waiting for the prices to fall as well as the technology to increase. And then so waiting for the next version, that's what the Osbourne Effect is. Waiting for the next version of the product you want to buy is called the Osbourne Effect. The Osbourne Effect, according to Wikipedia, is the effect is a social phenomenon of customers cancelling or deferring orders for the current, soon-to-be obsolete product as an unexpected drawback of a company's announcing a future product prematurely, which you then understand, oh, that's why when we film a Honda or we're filming another car this week, that we are absolutely not allowed to tell you anything about until September. I mean, it's incredible. I'm going to forget and blab, but I thankfully it's Jonny that's seeing it, not me, because I shouldn't be allowed to see those things. We wouldn't put it. So we're putting out an episode in September, but we're recording it this week. There you go. So but because they don't want you to know what that car is until September, but in case you don't buy the one they've got in the showroom now. They're trying to counter the Osbourne Effect. Oh, and because the automotive sector is the biggest production industry in the world, I didn't even know that. It is. It's the biggest production industry. They make the most stuff. This perfect storm of the Osbourne Effect and technological development will disrupt the world economy. This is according to Clean Technica. In the next 18 months, the global car market will move from having about a dozen viable electric cars to one in which there will be 3 dozen or more, from painfully expensive to moderately cheap. Most of these new cars will be a better value proposition than models currently on the market. Well, I think anyone who watches Fully Charged regularly or listens to this podcast is aware of that. And these new entrants will garner a lot of press coverage and word-of-mouth buzz. Yes, we've seen that hands-on, definitely first-hand experience. I mean, look at the Honda E prototype. This is boring for anyone outside our little group, but we are definitely getting more views. We had 1 million views, just short of 1 million views last week, in 1 week. That's setting a new record. But the episode with the Honda E prototype, beautifully shot, staggeringly beautifully put together, beautifully presented by Jonny Smith, but it's the car that draws people's attention. It got over 100,000 views in the first, I think, 4 hours that we released it. That we broke all our previous views records. There's a lot of interest in that car. So the little bits of stuff about what's happening with battery technology now, just so you know, because you might not want to buy an electric car yet because it's going to get cheaper. Characteristics of this curve, the technology curve it's known as in the business, the characteristics of this curve in relation to battery technology, a 14% decline in price per kilowatt hour and a 6% increase in density per which is kilowatt hours per kilogram. Combined with power electronics, battery and motor management computers, motors and gears, a combined decrease of 7% a year is generally accepted. So that's a cost decrease. The purchase of a new car is falling. Electric car is falling by 7% a year. Here's what's happening with fossil fuel cars. Environmental concerns call for increasingly stricter exhaust standards, making internal combustion engines and exhaust treating systems more expensive, resulting in an expected 3% yearly rise. So, I mean, I was very aware of this from talking to engineers. Fossil burning cars are going to get more expensive. Electric cars are going to get cheaper. Okay, so that's it. That's the end. I've done all that on my own. I hope that isn't too long. I'm just going to see how long that is. 30 minutes. That's not too bad. That's all we got time for. Please do subscribe to this. I'm sure you do. You don't need to be told this. It's just this habit now we've all got in. Please subscribe. Please click like. Please follow us on Facebook. You don't have to do any of that, but I would love you to subscribe to the Fully Charged Show video series because you're going to see some brilliant things. I just bashed the microphone then, I do beg your pardon. But there's such fantastic episodes coming out, and the team are working so hard. It's amazing. I'm in touch with them. We use Slack, a management tool, and we're constantly, there's all this slacking going on of all these different shows we're doing, of different projects we're doing. There's going to be a very exciting announcement which will have happened by the time you hear this. That's true. Fully Charged Live. It's Silverstone, the 7th, 8th and 9th. If you haven't been there yet, go check out the fullychargedshow.co.uk website. All the information's there, all the FAQs. You can buy tickets there. Tickets are on sale now. I can't say they're doing very well, the sales, because I'm recording this before we've released the tickets, but that's happening tomorrow where I am. No, I didn't even know. Time is confusing, isn't it? It's all relative. When you're in Australia, everyone's asleep in England. It's actually quite quiet on the Twitters. It's quite nice. I'm getting less abuse. And there'll be lots. There's some really good episodes coming up. Really professionally shot, rather than the one that I managed to cobble together when I drove the Tesla Model X across a quarter of Australia, even though Australia is quite a big country. Tasmania is beautiful. I've never been here before. I'm in Tasmania now. I'll do a little report about something. There's a lot of amazing stuff in Tasmania, mostly hydroelectric. They've got the cleanest electricity in Australia because they've got a lot of mountains and rivers and lakes and not many people, which makes hydroelectricity very easy, a bit like in Norway. Very unfair. That's all. I won't waffle on. If you have been, thank you for listening.